Alright, buddy boy, so here's what I got for you. You join the Owl House Coven, you get good comedy, a fun main cast, an immersive fantasy world, and subtle but effective real-life allegories. The main character's gonna be a little bit bland, but she'll get better with time, we promise. So what do you say, kid? Do we have ourselves a deal or what?
I don't know. That coven with the Scottish ducks is looking pretty promising.
You also get Wendy Malick as a sassy criminal mentor. You know, membership would go way up if you started with that. I'm in. A wise man once said that there are only two things that are certain in this world: death and taxes. And now with Disney slowly buying out this entire world, two new things will also be certain. Their live-action remakes were a huge mistake, and their cartoon shows will always be amazing. I mean, seriously, you look at their run from the Disney Afternoon all the way up to modern-day Disney Channel, and you'll find classic show after classic show. DuckTales, Tailspin, Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, Darkwing Duck, Goof Troop, Gargoyles, House of Mouse, Kim Possible, Dave the Barbarian, Lilo and Stitch the Series, The Emperor's New School, Phineas and Ferb, Wander Over Yonder, Star vs. The Force of Evil, Milo Murphy's Law, DuckTales again, Big City Greens, Amphibia, the list goes on and on. Of course, there were a few hiccups like The Mighty Ducks, Pickle and Peanut, and especially Gravity Falls.
Made you look.
But in the grand scheme of things, Disney has been hitting constant home runs with their cartoon programming. But one very recent show in particular has received universal fanfare ever since they announced the premise. That show is Dana Terrace's The Owl House. In general, it's a slice of life / horror / comedy cartoon about a girl finding her way into a fantasy world, getting taken under the wing of a crazy owl lady, and learning to use some magic of her own. Every cartoon reviewer under the sun has been saying, "You have to watch The Owl House! The Owl House is phenomenal! The Owl House is Disney's next big cartoon!" And thanks to Disney's excellent practice of posting their first episodes of their new shows on YouTube, I was able to check it out with my girlfriend as soon as it came out. And considering all the hype that the internet was putting behind this thing, I was really unimpressed at first. Compared to the other Disney online pilots I've seen, which either sold me on the show immediately, or at least intrigued me enough to check out more, the Owl House's pilot almost repelled me from wanting to watch the rest of the series. It starts off promising enough, with a witch speaking in generic fantasy hero talk, but then turning right around and firing her magic staff like an RPG, complete with the line, "Now eat this, sucker!" Now that's hilarious! Starting off dramatic and then jolting straight into comedic. It gave me vibes to the beginning of the Lego Movie, and that's always a good sign. But sadly, the rest of the episode never really reaches that high again. The pilot has two major problems that continue to persist for the whole 22 minutes. First off is the main character, Luz Nocida. She's introduced to us as the weird kid who no one understands because of their strange hobbies and interests. Dun 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 to death. Yeah, there's so many of this archetype out there that 3 more of these characters were probably created in the time it took me to say that. But in all honesty, I have no problem with this character type at all. I love having weirdos for my cartoon protagonists. The only real request I have is that they at least have a unique or interesting flavor of weird. You know, something that gives the character some real standout personality. And some of my favorite cartoon weirdos gave off this kind of vibe straight from their first appearance. Star Butterfly was insane and off-the-wall weird, with incredibly expressive faces, sporadic unpredictable behavior, and more energy than a squirrel that downed a warehouse of pixie sticks. Heck, this one image of her conjuring up a rainbow on fire literally sums up her entire personality. Finn the Human was over-adventurous and violent weird. He doesn't just enjoy the thrill of adventure, he's freaking obsessed with it, screaming like a madman while swooping down to ninja kick an enemy. Look at him doing his little dance and pounding the ground, just waiting to get out there. He lives for this kind of stuff. And Boon Choi was very low-key, quirky weird. She could definitely play the straight man to a lot of the weird happenings of Amphibia, but she's still her own flavor of bizarre, shown off perfectly through her mannerisms and delivery. You know what? I'll even throw SpongeBob in there, who's not only weird because he's a sponge that can literally reshape himself or get sliced to pieces and be totally fine, but also with how he's a fun-loving child at heart, doing things like jumping off a diving board into his clothes to get ready for the day, or saying, I'm ready," as he runs to his job. But the only way I could describe Luz, at least in her first appearance, is artificial weird. Like, the creator started with a basic template of what a modern-day weird kid is like, but instead of fleshing her out through animation, or memorable lines, or even visual shorthand, they just imply most of her weirdness through really clunky dialogue, leading to wonderful lines like this.
I thought I had a lot of weird stuff, but this is impressive.
And this.
You're all just a bunch of weirdos. Like me.
And worst of all, this.
I like editing anime clips to music and reading fantasy books with convoluted backstories.
Really? That's what we're going with? And the saddest part is that you could have easily given her more personality with some quick visual shorthand. Luz says she has a lot of weird stuff, huh? Well then how about showing us what her room looks like? Just a quick 10 to 15 second scene of her packing in her room instead of immediately cutting to her on the sidewalk. We'd actually get to see some of the weird stuff she has. Or maybe even adding more features to her design. I mean, you take one freaking look at Star Butterfly with her devil horns, striped socks, monster print boots, heart cheek marks, and cute little star purse, and you know she's a weird off-the-wall kind of girl without even needing to see her in motion. Even Anne's design says a lot with the little. Sure, it's just a school uniform that's a little messed up due to her current situation, but combining the normalcy of a uniform with certain features like messy hair and one shoe missing shows that she's a relatable normal character with a few things off about her that make her stand out. At least that's the way I see it anyway. But Luz's design on the other hand is just so bland. She looks like a background character that accidentally found her way into the protagonist role. I guess the point was to make her look normal to stand out against a more wild and inventive fantasy world a la Alice in Wonderland, but it doesn't fit with the whole relatable weirdo motif that they're trying to establish with her. All we really get is a cat hoodie and some barely visible buttons on her messenger bag, and that's barely enough to really get a sense of what she's like. Heck, she's wearing plain white Vans! Come on, kid, this isn't rocket surgery. Vans are like the most expressive type of shoe there is. Literally a blank canvas to cover with whatever you want. My brother owns over 30 pairs of the things, and they're all different and unique. Heck, he bought an Infinity War themed pair with Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet on them. You call yourself a weirdo, Luz the Human? Well, you'll never match up to the ultimate power that is Vanos. So grab those plain white shoes and go take a hike. Some mud splatters on them might actually add a little bit of character. I'm seriously ranting about a fictional character's shoes, aren't I? Well, this is where I'm at now, people. It's all downhill from here. The only time we get any sense of Luz's weirdness organically is during the beginning of the episode, and while it is pretty effective and kind of funny, it also works to the detriment of the story. It's clear from how this is framed that we're supposed to sympathize with Luz. Like, nobody gets her! She's just weird and quirky! It's not her fault! People just don't understand! Except no, she's not just weird and quirky. She's an active disturbance to her peers and the people around her. The montage we see of her oddities all involve kids screaming and running during class time or assemblies, causing unnecessary panic and wasting everyone's time. And yet they treat it like it's just Luz being misunderstood or something. At least when Star was a nuisance in her pilot, it's clear that she wasn't supposed to be sympathetic. She was a ticking time bomb of sprinkles and rainbows that needed to learn some self-control and manners, and that was made clear in the first episode. Here we're supposed to side with Luz, and I honestly don't. I kinda agree with the principal and her mother that she's in desperate need of a reality check. Maybe not a camp obvious metaphor, but at least in some way, shape, or form. But the worst part about the episode constantly forcing the idea that Luz is weird and quirky, we promise guys, is that the writing really feels like it's trying to push Luz as the mouthpiece for the blatantly obvious message of the episode without letting her be her own character first. Speaking of the message, that's number 2. The episode on a base level is just 22 minutes of this.
It's fun being weird, you should try it sometime.
And the saddest part is, I love this moral. I love this sentiment because I'm a weirdo too, and I've seen it done so well in other shows. If you want a good example, check out Wally and Ann from Amphibia. Yeah, the moral is definitely transparent, but the episode is subtle in its delivery, the dialogue between characters feels very natural and flows really well, and Wally is not only a really interesting character in his own right, but he's an outcast weirdo whose bizarre behavior feels organic and doesn't harm people around him. He's just an innocent raving madman with a lot of depth if you get to know him. On the opposite end, how does a lying witch and a warden play out? Well, we've got a character who's weird mostly through implication and or public disturbance, which kind of muddles the message. We've got a warden literally locking up people who are weird in cages, which is super on the nose. Constant clunky dialogue talking about how weirdos are good and conformity is bad.
There's no place in society for you if you can't fit in.
Why does everyone think that being a weirdo is so bad?
Us weirdos have to stick together.
And of course, rallying up everyone with a big weirdness soapbox speech. Or broomstick speech? It's not even really a broomstick, it's more like a stick without a broom, so it's just a stick speech. It doesn't matter, whatever. That's not to say the episode is not without its good parts, because trust me, there is a lot. The Boiling Owls is flooded with freakish fauna, and it's nice to see a Disney show with such a dark atmosphere and environment. Warden Wrath is an intimidating bad guy with a great design and voice, kinda like a mixture of Bismuth and Clayface. The comedy got a few laughs out of me, not as much as Star or Amphibious pilots, but still. And we get solid introductions to Ida and King, the show's two best characters. Not to mention an adorable scene where we find out the truth about King's crown of power, and why Ida really wanted to find it for him. If the episode tried to be a fun fantasy adventure first and a moral second, I think we could have had a fantastic introduction. But alas, the episode is heavily weighed down too much by its flaws, to the point where I really didn't feel like watching it more than once. So yeah, the pilot did very little for me, and while it wasn't abysmal, I wasn't really getting the next big cartoon vibes from any of it. I just thought it was subpar and overly preachy. But you should never judge a series only by one episode. So I follow my trusty 13 episode rule, where I give a show at least half a season before I decide to keep going. And I am happy to say that the Owl House definitely got a lot better with time. And to prove it, let's start by looking at the thing I prioritize in all the shows I watch: the characters. In my eyes, good characters can get you through any episode, even if the story is bland or predictable. And there are definitely some memorable faces in this cast. Ida the Owl Lady is hands down the best thing about this show, taking every single trope of the wise old mentor character and throwing it out the window, along with the bones of whatever rodent she ate last night. Instead of a mystical, all-knowing deity whose legacy is the stuff of legends, she's a magical trash hobo who's only viewed in the public eye as a notorious criminal. Instead of dispensing wisdom through flowery speech and complex metaphors, she always gives it to people straight, like a cool aunt or older sister who's been down that road before. Instead of a refined, elegant demeanor, she's a flirtatious, snarky bad girl, and keeps that spirit alive even in her old age. And even with all this, she's not just an asset flip for the sake of being one. She's an awesome character in her own right. We get all kinds of hilarious Easter eggs like the #1 bad girl mug, which show that she wears her infamous reputation like a badge. Or like a t-shirt in some cases. Heck, one of the first things you notice in her house is a blown up version of her wanted poster. She even hangs Luce's poster right next to hers when she finally gets one. And of course you've got the onslaught of hilarious lines that she dishes out in almost every episode.
I need an extra pair of eyes looking out for pickpockets, and an extra pair of hands in case I want a pickpocket.
But underneath that gruff exterior, she's certainly got a lot of love for the people she cares about. I already mentioned how she risked her life against a tentacle-slinging ex-boyfriend just to make sure King becomes the Burger King, but she also spends the entirety of episode 9 cleaning up her crimes at Hexside just to get Luce enrolled.
They're just as bad as Luce. She'd love it here.
Aw, Ida, your maternal gesture is showing. And of course she is voiced by the legend that is Wendy Malick. I love Wendy Malick. She's basically the female Patrick Warburton, where she always uses the same voice for all her roles, and yet her delivery is so freaking fun and hilarious that you don't care. I just love her brand of snarky wit, and she makes even the most minor of roles hilarious.
I gotta go wash something.
Also, hearing lines like, "I'm a sleepy little owl" coming out of her mouth is unexpectedly adorable, and I love it.
I'm sleepy. I'm a sleepy little owl.
Aw, she's so cute when she's sleeping. Aw, I value my life, so I'm gonna leave now. King is definitely second best, and technically, yeah, his base character is just one recurring joke, being that he was once the king of demons and still acts like an evil tyrant despite being a huggable fluff butt now, but the writers find enough variation on that joke to make scenarios with him entertaining, like claiming a playground slide as his domain, or seeing free swag from a convention as some kind of offering to his power. While King is definitely a ton of fun on his own, I think the dynamics he shares with his two roomies are the best part about him. The way him and Ida interact is not just good for comedy, but it's also a great portrayal of longtime best buddies. Yeah, they do care for each other, which is definitely evident, but they spend a lot of their time messing with one another, hurling insults at each other. You know, never in a cruel or hurtful way, but in a playful and teasing way. And it makes any subplots involving the two of them a ton of fun to watch. As for him and Luce, they share a bit of a kindred spirit relationship. In the same way that Luce's weird behavior makes her an outcast that no one takes seriously, King's small size and adorable demeanor puts him in the same boat. I mean, he used to be the feared king of demons, but now he can't even be the king of the playground. And while I love his adorable moments, I also feel really bad for the guy. And it makes scenes like Luce taking his demon class feel really sweet and special, since it's giving him power and purpose again as a professor. Moments like these set these two up as a really nice pair, and I'd like to see King and Luce interact in more episodes if possible. Speaking of Luce, my relationship with her as a character at the moment is a little mixed. Out of the 3 Owl House occupants, she stands out the least to me. She definitely has some adorable moments, and her weirdness is shown more than implied here, which is much appreciated, but compared to the other Disney protagonists like Star, or Anne, or Wanda, or Scrooge, there's just not much about her that stands out. She's a shut-in fantasy nerd, and not a whole lot else. Honestly, there are times when I kinda wish the show was just about Ida and King. I mean, King kinda covers what Luce brings to the table and does it a lot better, like being an outcast due to something you can't control, and irresistible cuteness in almost every scene he's in. Sorry, Luce, but no cat hoodie is gonna beat the almighty squeak of rage. And saving that as my text alert. But, and there's a really big but, while her personality isn't particularly strong, her character arc definitely is. Every episode after the pilot bashes Luce over the head with one reality check after another. When she starts out, her views of fantasy and magic are made up of typical fantasy tropes, like strong, pure-hearted heroes going on quests made for the chosen one. But bit by bit, she starts to understand things like heroes are not chosen, magic is not a toy, and rivals don't become friends immediately. Sorry to break it to you, kid, but life's not going to become better the second you step into a fantasy world. Every world is going to have sketchy, underhanded people that are going to trick you, creatures that will fight for survival, people with complex history and struggles, and resources that need to be used carefully or else you risk causing more trouble. I'll talk more about the undertones of the world later, but this is something I was so happy to see, and something that Luce desperately needed to learn early on. I also gotta give Luce a lot of credit for making attempts to be her own individual. In the episode Convention, which is one of the best in my opinion, we find out that Ida's criminal record comes from the fact that she refused to join a coven. So obviously with Luce being her pupil, she wants to try and deter Luce from joining one herself. But instead of just blindly following Ida's advice, she says this.
I get it, Ida. Coven's bad, individualism good. But I'm still figuring this world out, so I'm going to go in there and make up my own mind, okay?
You know what? Points for being open-minded. She could have easily just conformed to Ida's mindset, but instead she wants to make up her own mind. I respect that, Luce, and I respect you. It's clear from later episodes that Luce is still on that fantasy high that she was on when she got here, and that's fine. There's still plenty to see and plenty more lessons to learn. And yeah, sometimes she does make some really stupid decisions, like putting Ida's name in lights when she knows that Ida is a wanted criminal. I mean, even when she's in Ida's body, she knows that she's not the best with magic, so why would she take that chance? But hey, we still got plenty more episodes to let her develop, so hopefully she'll grow on me more as the series progresses. The rest of the side cast can be a mixed bag. Willow is basically a more nerdy version of Layla from Sky High, with godlike plant manipulation powers that she doesn't fully let out until later in her premiere episode. She's decent enough and has a few cute moments, so I'll let her pass. My thoughts on Gus are kinda polarizing. Sometimes he's a total boss, sometimes he's incredibly annoying, and in the end he falls into the same ballpark as Willow. Decent, but nothing special. Hootie was a character that I really grew to love. In the first 2 episodes, I thought he was just gonna be the butt monkey of the show, who gets tortured every now and then for a big laugh. And most of the time he is, and it surprisingly works. But we also get to see that he can bite right back with some actions of his own, like rolling around in the mud so Ida and the others have to clean him. I mean, at the end of the day, he is their house. They're gonna have to live in him, so they have no choice. You pain in the neck. Lilith is a pretty fascinating character. She's pretty much Ida's polar opposite in terms of carrying herself, but it's clear that she still does love her sister very much. I mean, one single mention of Ida's curse, and she immediately lets her guard down. Throw in how happy she gets when Ida shows interest in the Emperor's Coven, and it's clear that she's only being tough on Ida because she cares about her and wants the best for her. Even Ida, as much of a pain as she is to Lilith, also shows how much she cares for her as well. In the 9th episode, one of her school misdemeanors was literally an abomination food fight that she started because someone stole her sister's lunch money. You look me in the eye and tell me that's not adorable. The last really noteworthy character is Amity Blight. She starts off as the top of her class stuck-up bully girl who teases Willow and gets mad when she isn't number 1.
Oh boy, we're gonna hate you, aren't we?
Nope, because with some great appearances that follow her first one, we get a real sense of what she's like as a person. She worked hard to get where she is in her school, and considering her life outside of classes, especially with her annoying siblings, it's the thing that she takes the most pride in, and her reaction to Luce is very realistic. She's very mixed on how to feel about her, not just based on her weird human heritage, but also her actions. After having a balance of good and bad experiences with her, and also questioning her own behavior, they don't immediately become friends after one adventure together. She says she wants to go and think about it, and that's totally fair. She might be my favorite member of the sidecast at the moment, and I do want to see what she grows into. Also, that freaking screaming school bell. I don't know why, but every single time I see that thing, I crack up. It's like the internal screams of everyone who's ever gone to school manifested into this thing. Come on, one more time. But the good stuff doesn't just stop at characters. Gone are the pilot's habits of bashing surface-level messages of nonconformity into your face, and in its place is some deep and subtle commentary that isn't preachy and flows with the stories instead of working against them. Let me lay some sweet facts on you real quick. Covens in the world of the Owl House are the magic equivalent of labor unions. And as Luce puts it, you get acceptance, camaraderie, and a sense of belonging, but at the cost of all of your other magic being sealed away. Labor unions are in the same ballpark, where groups of workers in a similar field get together and are able to negotiate with companies and businesses to further their rights and interests. Unions are like the bridge that unite big companies and groups of workers so they can settle things. Now, you won't be labeled a criminal if you choose not to join a workers' union. Heck, there are laws that protect your right to refuse one. The only drawback is that if you're not in a union, many job opportunities are going to be closed off to you, and it's going to be difficult if you want to get by. Owl House goes a little more extreme with this idea by making it illegal to not join a coven, but certain principles still stand. The show makes it clear that completely giving into conformity will limit your potential as a person, in the same way that joining a coven literally limits your usage of magic. A lot of people tend to become cogs in the machine of society, and never really have time to let their individuality shine, which is a shame because lots of people have really awesome talents worth expressing and exploring. However, it's also shown that sometimes conforming is a necessity to some degree to get the things you need, like jobs, medicine, food, education, and references. I mean, Ida is a complete outcast from society, and look at where her and King are at now. Living on the outskirts of town, always on the run from the law, digging through trash slugs looking for merch to sell, they have next to nothing. And it's even worse when you learn about Ida's curse. A curse in this show is portrayed like a chronic illness, with Ida constantly needing to take medicine in order to stave it off. But with her being a criminal and all, it's practically impossible for her to get affordable health care. Not only with literal capitalist pigs jacking up the prices, but also with her criminal record. No one's going to want to sell to her. They'd be afraid to tarnish their reputation. Or worse, they might take her in for the reward money. If she's viewed as a criminal in the eyes of society, and society is the only place she can get the help she needs, she's kind of screwed. Despite taking place in a fantasy world, The Boiling Owls is a pretty accurate depiction of the real world, showing that sometimes you need to sacrifice your individuality in order to survive, which is really tragic, but sadly the way things are. I think that's a much more effective message than just, be weird because being weird is good. But at the same time, the show isn't completely against conformity. I mean, Ida does eventually enroll Luce in Hexside by the 9th episode, agreeing that it'll be a good opportunity for her. I know everyone is going to have their problems with schooling systems, and so do I, but in concept it is a very efficient and useful way to educate large masses of individuals while also encouraging teamwork and social interaction. And Principal Bump isn't portrayed as a one-note evil tyrannical headmaster. He's a fair and just man of his word, who allows Luce to enroll as long as Ida pays the fair price and cleans up the damage she did to his school. Same can be said for Lilith, who's shown to be a kind and sympathetic sister and not just a cold, menacing army general, showing that even those who serve the highest authority in the land are still people at the end of the day. I don't know about you guys, but I personally think the show strikes a really good balance. Not being afraid to show the darker underbelly of conformist society, but not demonizing it by showing nothing but its negative aspects. It's something that's likely going to go straight over kids' heads as they'll just be interested in the magic and monsters and stuff, but it'll make them respect it more when they get older and realize what they missed. As far as everything else goes, I mentioned before that the world of the Owl House is delightfully dark, with interesting personality around every corner, and the fluid animation gives it the spark it needs to really come to life. There were moments that I noticed some weird shifts in animation style, like it'll start with the normal movements, and then jump to a scene which looks like James Baxter made it. I'm not complaining since James Baxter is the man, but it can be noticeable at times. The creatures in both the background and the foreground are really inventive and appropriately scary, and there are plenty of standouts I could mention. The Bat Queen in particular looks like the perfect blend of a motherly character and an unsettling nightmare, like Morticia Addams after she got bitten by a vampire, and her character is just as entertaining. I want to see more of her. and her little bat babies. The abominations are a unique concept too, a gigantic massive sludge that's always at its master's beck and call. However, and this is gonna sound really dumb, the name is something that really bugs me. Look, if you're gonna have a magical creature that you need to say the name of so it'll obey commands, it's gotta be something that's snappy and fun to say. Take Johnny 13 from Danny Phantom. He had a shadow as a minion, and he would always say, shadow, fetch, shadow, attack, shadow this, and shadow that. Nice, short, 2 syllables, rolls right off the tongue. But abomination is such a mouthful to say every time you want it to do something. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one with this hang-up, but I think that magical servant names should be more fun to say over and over again. The last thing I want to point out is how unique the magic in this world is. Instead of simple hand pointing or wand pointing or staff pointing or whatever pointing, the magic in this world is performed through the creation of specific runes in circles. For witches it seems to be as easy as drawing a circle with your finger and then picturing the rune in your head. But for humans like Luce, one must actually draw the full rune on a surface like a wall or a piece of paper. I know that everybody's already made the comparison to alchemy. Heck, Ida in one episode straight up says everything comes from something, which is exactly how alchemy works. But while it's not entirely original, it's still really fascinating. And also a cute little gimmick for the kids who watch this. You can't tell me that little Owl House fans aren't going to start practicing these runes in their notebooks and pretending to be witches themselves. I could totally see that happening. So all things considered, do I think that the Owl House is the must-watch cartoon of the current decade? Depends what you focus on. It's got some great underlying themes, an amazing mentor character, a good sense of humor, a unique and intriguing world with a macabre theme, and Bill Cipher as a Muppet Baby, which are all good qualities. But the majority of the plots are kinda predictable or just completely stock, the side cast is very mixed, Luce has a good character arc but isn't as endearing as other Disney protagonists, and sometimes there are plot points that are a little facepalm worthy. However, do I think it has the potential to be the next big cartoon that everybody's talking about? Absolutely yes, and that's why I'm going to keep watching. I only watched the first 10 episodes as of the time of recording this, and there will probably be more episodes sooner than later. So I'll definitely keep it on my radar, and if I get more into it, I'll give it the old theory and reaction treatment that I gave to Steven Universe, along with Amphibia of course. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what the Owl House evolves into. If it can go from total train wreck to delightfully deep, there's no telling where it could be headed next. I don't think it's reached the internet conquering power that everybody's praising it for, but I do know good ideas when I see them, and this show's definitely got my attention. Also, Bill Cipher on King's Board of Demons triangles all over the Emperor's Coven. King Bello sounds very close to Bill. Bill is secretly the Emperor. Gravity Falls in Owl House. Same universe confirmed. Kinda sorta. Maybe I'll make a video, maybe not. I don't know. Just a game theory. Bye!